What advice would you give someone who's trying to break into the art world?
Don't quit. We need you. Please. The art world will never stop needing young, exciting people. And don't let the first no or the first failure or, the first rejection, don't let that set you back. I think that traditional galleries often forget a key audience that they need to be speaking to, which are young people, which are people that are showing up to the openings for the love of the game, who are really invested in the discourse around art. Most exciting practitioners that I know are people that never went to school, that picked up art as a hobby and have developed it into a career, but also aren't concerned by how things should be done. They do things the way that they need to do it, and by and large, the end product is so much better for it.
Well, welcome to the Inside the Art World podcast.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
having you. I was going to hit off with the questions here, but I want our audience to know more about, minor attractions and, what's that about and, and how you built that.
Yeah, so Minor Attractions started in 2023, it was kind of co-founded between myself and Johnny Tanner from Harleston High Street. And it began as this really scrappy endeavor where we thought that there was an opportunity to do something in London, and to pull together our community in a really effective way. And so we just started calling people, and we ended up kind of that year doing it in two spaces, one in Borough Yards, which is just behind Borough Market, and one on Manette Street in Soho. And it was just kind of trial by fire, right? Like sending out invitations and praying people came. And I remember this moment of relief when we opened the doors at Borough Yards, and it was just like, I couldn't believe that it had actually happened. And from there, I think we moved into the Mandrake the next year, which is really kind of where we've taken on our current form, and used the last really 24 months to keep building out our programming and refining our vision. And I think now, we're very proud to run the art fair that we have in October, but also really thinking about what we're able to do programmatically, how we're able to bring in new communities that are maybe adjacent to art and other elements, and make sure that, I think we are speaking to the biggest possible group that's interested in what we're doing and creative culture in London.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing, and I look forward to us. We're going to be doing some amazing things as well.
Absolutely.
What makes you, different from other art fairs?
I think that, there's a couple of things that I would pinpoint as being key differentiators. One is that we're gallery run. So, everyone involved either at this juncture, either previously has worked for a gallery or currently works for a gallery. And so we are really up to date with what that world looks like because we're living it every day. But of course, we're not the only gallery run thing in the world. What I would also say is kind of a really key differentiator for us is our programming. And so, I think from day one, we were really interested in bringing in these adjacent communities to art, to fine art or visual art, and giving them pride of place in terms of what we were doing. And that really has developed through some incredibly talented people that we work with, and are now, kind of part of our core setup. And of course, our director, Sophie Barrett-Pulo, deserves a huge shout out for her work in this regard. That's become our real calling card. And that's really come to be in large part how we define ourselves. And so, now we're of course launching Summer Sessions, our festival in May. And that's kind of a real outgrowth of that. So that's what I would say is kind of the key difference. But of course there are little things that permeate throughout, right? We're a small team that is very present, that is, I think, very proud to have our hand in everything that happens. And so, if a gallery has a problem or wants things to be a certain way, there isn't any bureaucracy. There's just our phone number and email, and we tend to those things kind of day and night. So I think that's kind of the approach we take, and everyone's family, we're all in this together.
You said the biggest misconception about the art world is that it's glamorous. What's the reality of this all?
I think a lot of it is incredibly boring and very taxing. And I think, I often joke with my colleagues that our entire lives are spreadsheets and emails, and, we're glorified kind of email monkeys. But I think ultimately, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I think for every night that we get to swan around and drink free wine or beer at an opening, there's 10, 50, 100 nights that are spent working, trying to just get the doors open. And what, we hope feels really simple to an outsider, to the public, is usually very difficult.
Yeah, it's super admin every single day, emails, spreadsheets. I'm doing a bunch of presentations right now, and it's just like we probably do about maybe 4 events a year,
Yeah.
but it's just constant calls, emails.
All the time. And I think the biggest thing too is that like everyone forgets the very real production side of things, that for a painting to get up on the wall in the simplest sense, someone has to put it there. It has to be, secured, etc. For anything more complicated, all of that's built. And people are, running around, getting these things done. There's a huge amount of physical labor for everyone that goes into it, from the presentation to the shipping to the packaging. It takes an army. So
Yeah. Why do you think people still romanticize the art world?
I think that a lot of people involved in the art world like to present it that way. I think that, maybe it's a little bit of a holdover from maybe 20 years ago when the art world was a little bit different. But I also think that now, one of the great blessings of the world that we live in is that we have the opportunity to be transparent about the things that we're doing. Not everything needs to be hidden. And I think, I hope that narrative changes a little bit, because I think at the very least, I hope it opens doors to people who see this quote unquote, exclusivity and feel that that's not for them, that they recognize that if they have applicable skills, this can be something that they do too.
Similar to you, I feel like I've got into this art space by accident. I originally started off in music, then I went to a few galleries and fell in love with the whole entire thing. How did you fall into this by accident?
Oh, goodness. I'm nothing if not driven by spite. And I was dating a girl in college who studied art history. And at the time, I was studying film. And kind of one thing led to another, and we broke up. And I was like, well, maybe I should try this art stuff. And, lo and behold, you kind of make a couple friends. You put on a couple shows. And then, I think in my case, I found that it was not only work that I enjoyed, but I felt that I was good at. And I've just put one foot in front of the other for the last 7, 8 years.
And like, what were the steps into building what you've built now? Were there exhibitions beforehand, before this brand? Or like, what did that whole entire process look like for you?
So much failure. And I really wish that someone, when I was starting, someone would have told me, like, you will fail more times than you can count. I've opened galleries and closed galleries. I have, traveled around the world for absolutely no gain. And, I think that the steps that I've taken have largely been missteps. And the best thing that I've done to date is to just keep going. Because what I would say is that, yes, there are exhibitions and there are going to be more bad exhibitions. And certainly in my case, there have been more bad exhibitions than there have been good exhibitions. But if you just keep doing them, it's eventually you get them right.
Yeah.
And you start to get more right than you get wrong.
How was the experience with working in a gallery versus doing the independent, your stuff that you're doing now?
I think in a gallery, in a gallery setting and still running a gallery and having a very, an incredibly competent co-director in Michael Sangster, I think previously was afforded the opportunity alone to think that all of my thoughts were good. And now have someone who very kindly reminds me otherwise. And I think particularly with regard to minor attractions, as that scales up, the humility that goes in, hand in hand with doing something like that is only amplified. And I guess, ultimately what I mean by that is that as more opportunities become available, the more ideas or things you want to do, you have. And working in a team, I feel very grateful that those around me remind me that I have mostly bad ideas. So as I think we all do, right? But
Yeah.
I am often reminded that not every idea needs to be shared. So it's, I think the biggest difference is that I'm kept in check maybe a little bit more.
You've mentioned inclusivity, humor, and urgency as a core theme. How does that show up in what you've built?
Inclusivity with regard to quality is never an option, right? we need to prioritize the best of what we can do at every juncture. But creating opportunities for those that are doing good work and may not have the opportunity to either be legible to a certain audience, or have the funds or otherwise the opportunity to be a part of this infrastructure. I feel that it's our responsibility to create those inroads. And ultimately, you know, I really pride our organization on, like, if someone's put on an exhibition in their bedroom and invited a couple of friends, we probably know about it. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I'm most proud of, is that we are every year inviting these spaces that maybe have done like one show to come and join us, because we really liked it and we really liked what they were doing. So I think, that's definitely a big part of it. In terms of humor, I think that the art world takes itself incredibly seriously, and
Big time.
And I don't really have a whole lot of time for that. But I've also found that I am most moved when I don't know whether I should be laughing or crying. And that, to me, is when I hit like an emotional point where art really means something to me. And I think that really goes hand in hand with the notion of urgency. Because as far as I'm concerned, I think art needs to be doing something. It needs to be having an emotional effect on people. And, I think that we can very easily forget that art is a really efficacious medium for communicating.
Yeah.
It's not just about like pretty pictures, or sometimes it can be, because those are very pleasant if that's the thing you want to communicate. But, I feel, or I think one of the things that I try to get across in everything that we do is that if we're doing something, we have to mean it and we have to be saying something. And, hopefully whatever we're saying is urgent and of the moment.
No, I fully agree. And I like the fact that you take risks on new things, new talent. Seeing someone do it from their bedroom, he's like, come on in. I think that's something similar that I started in, getting into the arts, but mainly finding all my friends on Instagram who was just painting. I was like, I've got a space, everybody come through and, exhibit some work. So yeah, that makes sense.
Fun.
Yeah.
I don't need to be in a room with a bunch of people I've already met.
Exactly. And it's not bound by he studied here, they exhibit here. It's just like, are you good? What's your vibe? And, bring it on.
But I absolutely think that the most interesting people that I know can't be put in those boxes and would hate to be put in those boxes. Yeah. Because they're doing things that are off the wall and interesting and, I think aren't necessarily referential in those ways. Mm-hmm. Those are the people I want to be with. So,
likewise, man. What do traditional galleries get wrong?
I think that traditional galleries often forget a key audience that they need to be speaking to, which are young people, which are people that are showing up to the openings for the love of the game, who are really invested in the discourse around art. And I think that when you're in it and you're looking at the books and you're kind of aware of how the quote unquote sausage is made, it's really easy to kind of limit your vision towards maybe a group of people who can financialize that effort, right? So maybe they're buying the work or they're buying the books that you make or, so on and so forth. But I really wish that more traditional galleries kept a space and actively cultivated an audience that wasn't doing that, but really cared and really showed up. Because I think that one of the things that I try to remember is that if there's someone who shows up to my openings again and again and again, they need to be given the same respect as someone who's coming in and maybe buying the work, right? Because they're showing real commitment to the program. And at the end of the day, that's why we do this. Like, as I said before, with regard to communicating, if the message that we're sending out is being received, that's an opportunity to commune with someone and really kind of, share your interests. The money will come and go.
Yeah. What are you doing intentionally this year that's different to what you did before?
Slowing down and being more intentional. I think that both, I think particularly with minor attractions, we've been incredibly blessed to have opportunities become available that, when you're just starting out, aren't immediately. And definitely one of the things that we focus on is only biting off opportunities that we really feel we can execute to the best of our ability. And that's a tough lesson to learn. I think I've definitely in the past wanted to do everything all at once, but one of the things that I think we are constantly talking about is whether or not we feel a given opportunity at the given moment is right for everything else going on, right? Because if it doesn't matter if you can do it, it's whether or not you can do it well, that really matters. So I think that's really what we're doing differently than maybe I personally have done in the past. But yeah, I think just also thinking about refinement is very much a part of that, and that's just where we're at.
A statement that I agree with, art is for everyone, because a lot of the time it's very boxed off in certain spaces. Why do you feel, or if you feel, that the art world is still in that exclusive box and doesn't feel like it's for everyone when you step in?
I think in some regards, it's not exclusively the industry's fault. Galleries are often open to the public, and I know that people want people to come in. I think it's really that, as I said before, galleries really need to focus on cultivating an audience with the general public and getting people excited to come in. Because if so many people, if they aren't invited or aren't made aware or aren't just, I think amazed by what's happening, it's not something that they'll take time out of their day to do. And as a result, it's not a world that people will discover. And so, I think that it largely feels exclusive because there hasn't been enough work done to mitigate that feeling, even if the work has been done to mitigate some of those actual impediments.
What's the frustration about how the art industry operates?
Where to begin?
Loads.
No, I think my frustration about how the art industry operates is, again, it takes itself very seriously, but I want to live in a world where the art industry prioritizes talent. It prioritizes urgency and kind of drive. And I think that choosing the thing we know is always easier than choosing the thing we don't. And I would love to see people take more risks.
Do you think the systems are broken in the art world, or they're outdated?
Oh, I just think they're outdated. And I also think that thinking about whether or not a system is broken or not maybe isn't the most useful lens to think of it through, because I think that the notion of it being broken maybe suggests that there's almost nothing to salvage and we have to start again. Whereas I think of everything as much more fluid. There are some things that we like and there are some things that we can leave behind. And if we focused on that mode of thinking, ultimately the mode of thinking of it being outdated, we can keep our best bits and develop new things too.
I'm going to talk more on the business side of it all. Running galleries and fairs from the outside, which everybody tells me, oh, it looks fun, it's amazing. You get to do
I wouldn't
this,
know
you
about
meet that.
that.
You meet this artist and that artist. What's the hardest part for you that people don't see?
Oh, I think there's just so many moving parts. There's so many plates to balance all at once. And, I think that one of the things that people maybe don't necessarily know or imagine is that, last year we had 15,000 people come through the door. We know about all 15,000 people. And, what I would say is that more often than not, we can kind of like get a sense of where they're going and what they're doing. And it only takes one of them to do something silly to set off everything else. And so
big chain reaction.
Exactly. And so that's happening on a micro scale every day. That's probably the hardest part.
What separates people who last in this industry versus who just drops out once they realize this might be a little bit boring?
It's my mother taught me not to swear on camera, but it's people who can get kicked in the teeth and come back. And I think that, resilience, we talk about resilience as if it's like this thing that, you practice like a skill, which I guess it is, but you need to be able to take it, because I think that, as with anything, the industry works in a certain way and it doesn't typically love change. And when you are trying to instigate some of that change, you will get a lot more no's than yeses. And you will get a lot of people that aren't super excited by that. And so, if you can't look that or those people or whatever in the eye and move on, it's going to be a tough career.
Yeah. I mean, I've dealt with 1,000 no's. I'm still going through my no folder right now. Do you know what I mean? So I think definitely resilience is in there, but also, you know, having a good team, and you've got an amazing team. Do you know,
Oh my goodness.
how important is that for you?
I would say that my team is everything. We couldn't do anything without the team that we have, and to call them my team feels almost like a bit of a misnomer, that we are a collective team, of which I get to be a part of. You know, I think that I am blessed every day to work with the most talented people I've ever met. And, you know, I think we talked a little bit, you know, earlier about maybe advice that you'd give someone. And the biggest piece of advice that I'd ever give anyone is, if you walk into the room and feel like the smartest person, you need to get out of that room. You know, and I think that every day I walk into, you know, where we work, and I'm taken to task. And I am both humbled and incredibly grateful that more often than not, they're right. And I, you know, do you know what? I just have to, I have to celebrate every little win that I get, because they come few and far between.
Yeah.
But that is an incredible luxury.
Talk to us about summer sessions. What's that about? You know, how did that get started?
100%. Summer Sessions is a new festival that we are running this year, May 28th to the 30th. It got started because the event program that we have at Minor Attractions became so robust and such a draw that we were just like, we couldn't contain it in a single week. And we thought, okay, well, we need to be doing something that is bringing this all together. The other side of it, too, is that when we're doing it during Art Week, that's mid-October. That's a terrible time to be going out. Like, it's rainy, it's cold.
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, well, we need to be able to collect this stuff, and we want to enjoy doing it. And so we said, okay, well, let's do it over the summer. And it made sense because, you know, we're the week before London Gallery Weekend. We're the week after a bunch of festivals. So there's this nice little lull that we settle into. And it's really just about celebrating our community and what a bunch of people are doing, but creating this environment where you can go to gigs and see performances, but also go to a panel talk, also go to a screening, and trying to break down these barriers of saying, well, I'm this kind of person, or I'm this kind of person, and giving people the opportunity to really expand their horizons and just like consider the things they want to enjoy and be given the opportunity to really do that.
Do you think you have to be a bit obsessive to be successful in this space?
100%. I think there has to be something wrong with you if you're going to have the kind of obsession. And I think that goes for a lot of things, but I think I've said something in the past about owning your pathology. And, you know, I think that the traits that are required to be successful in this business, and I think in a bunch of other businesses, are difficult to build lives around. But I ultimately think that if you can own them and figure out how to factor those into a lifestyle that works for you, that's the way to do it. Because I think trying to convince everyone else that you're normal isn't going to work.
My missus thinks I'm a lunatic currently.
Yep, that's the story of my life.
In terms of how I produce things, I'm up till 3 o'clock trying to figure things out. She says I'm notoriously watching gurus online just to learn more about other spaces to implement it into our space.
My partner thinks I'm a crazy person and has for years.
Yeah.
And I think that only now is coming around to the idea that, like, okay, some of it's working. So it's just like, I won't bother him about it anymore. But yeah.
Nah, it's all good. What advice would you give someone who's trying to break into the art world?
Don't quit. We need you, please. You know, the art world will never stop needing young, exciting people. And don't let the first no or the first failure or, you know, the first rejection, don't let that set you back. Just use it and, you know, find, I think, an energy and a passion that's ignited by a desire to be part of this. You know, I think that far too many people are turned away from the broader industry or art world because they're kept away at the outset. And I think that if we just had a few more young people who could stick with it and, you know, decide that this was the kind of life that they wanted to pursue, the art world could be a much different place. And there are already some incredible people that are coming up the ranks that are so talented, you know, here in London, New York. But the more the merrier, right? If we can keep things moving, then that's like how you build generations of great, great practitioners.
Yeah. What type of game changers are you seeing in the space? Like, I'm seeing some amazing, you know, gallery visitors who just visit a gallery and give their review online. Like everybody's changing in a different way. Like the industry's developing in unique ways. You know, who are you paying attention to in that space?
I think there are some really incredible galleries that are opening up that are younger. I don't want to name any for fear of forgetting someone because that's a huge danger.
I've been
But
there.
you know, I think that the way that galleries are treating space is really interesting. Not being tied down and being a nomadic gallery isn't immediately new, but I think we're kind of seeing this hybrid happen where galleries will do a couple shows in a row, then maybe take a little break, then move on to somewhere else. And I think that can be a really productive way of working because, you know, it gets boring for everyone if you're in the same space all the time. But I also think that exactly as you said, the way that we're talking about art is changing. The way that people are engaging the kind of social elements of the art world is also really interesting. And I hope that just continues, right? I hope that we can continue to break down some of the barriers between the way that we understand the art world and the broader entertainment world.
Yeah.
And hopefully there can be a merging between those.
In terms of like independent artists, how do they, you know, get involved in something like this? Do they have to be represented by a gallery, or can they just, you know, come towards you guys and say, hey, want to be a part of something?
We get people reaching out to us all the time about just us doing studio visits, us looking at their work. We look at every email. And, you know, like obviously when you get a bunch of people reaching out, not everything's going to be for you. But I will be the first person to tell you that we've absolutely had many studio visits and a couple of shows come through someone just reaching out. And that's been a really great and organic way of finding people. And I think, you know, particularly for galleries or artists that do a really specific thing, if you can connect with a gallery that also does a specific thing, or not even a gallery, a curator, like that will often be a really good match. Because if you find that it's hard to find galleries that do what you do, it's probably hard for the gallery to find artists that do what they do. So reach out. Like, we don't bite. I think we're excited to be meeting new people, to be finding new talent, because it is quite literally our job.
Yeah.
So, you know, I maybe that's not the answer other galleries would give, but like, come by, we'll get a coffee. It's fun.
No, that's good. I think I like the fact that it's still open. It doesn't feel rigid, or there's some rigorous application form that people have to write up and give their key things about what their art's about.
Because that's silly. It's silly. And it's just like, you know, again, we're not saving lives. We're not doctors. If you make good art, show it. Because if it's good, we'll probably like it. And that's fun. That's part of the process. You know, and I think that anyone, particularly in the gallery or curatorial side of things, who thinks that they've seen it all hasn't. And, you know, there one day is going to be someone who comes through the door who is going to completely redefine the way you think about art. And the more people you turn down, the higher the likelihood that you're going to miss that person.
Do artists need to be in a system to succeed?
Absolutely not. And I think that any artist that is in a system is going to struggle to succeed. I think that so many of the current systems that exist now or have existed that are designed to amplify artists are outdated, are no longer serving the interests of those that are a part of them, and we need to radically rethink the way that we promote artists in not only our industry but the world. I think that some of the most exciting practitioners that I know are people that never went to school, that picked up art as a hobby and have developed it into a career, but also aren't concerned by, you know, how things should be done. They do things the way that they need to do it, and by and large, the end product is so much better for it. So, you know, I think that if you feel that you do better thinking independently and developing systems for yourself, do that, because it's going to shine through. You know, if a system is stopping you from realizing the full version of the thing that you need to be, don't listen to it. You know, rules are there to be broken.
Amazing. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome.